Well, hello, folks. Yeah, I just do a quickie. Can't help it. Can't help myself. Off to Lisbon again soon. But anyway, as usual, reading in the morning, a bunch of long form stuff. These days I'm trying to read at night, but the Olympics are distracting me. So I'm trying to read my books at nighttime and go to sleep earlier. Sleep hygiene is so important. I mean, man, it's the best thing, a good night's sleep. Anyway, I saw something from Caitlin Johnstone on Medium today, and a few things she said here. She's making the point that both parties are kind of war parties. The title of this piece is U.S. Troops Get Hurt in the Middle East because of the assholes who put them there. So, yeah, and who are those assholes? Is it the commander-in-chief or the people behind the commander-in-chief that are in his ear, the devil on the shoulder, so to speak? And my opinion is, after all of my reading over the years and watching this and these elections, every 4 years for decades, is that our political leaders aren't really our leaders. I mean, our lawmakers do something, but they don't do that much for us. Obviously, they still ostensibly work for their constituents, the electorate, the people who vote for them. But in reality, they don't. And again, it's the money in politics and all that kind of stuff. So if groupthink is a thing, and fitting in and not rocking the boat so that you can have a good career is a thing, which it is obviously, then there are people who are influencing our leaders all the time. So they may say one thing and do something else. This is typical. So the rhetoric at the DNC convention is the stuff we've heard before. It doesn't ever change. The things they promise and talk about, it's the same old, same old. And then Trump and Vance come out and attack them as insane, crazy liberals, which they're not. They're not even close. However you define liberalism, it's neoliberal, it's neocon. But anyway, be that as it may, that's what I've learned. But you may think I'm crazy. I just don't think that they do the job we think they do. I think they're actually maybe not consciously, working against us because they're diabolical and insane and psychopathic, but because they have all these pressures from the real constituents, the people with power and influence, the players, I call them. And this is just a huge network of all kinds of people, corporate people, institutional people, people who have been trained to play the great game and who play it well and believe in it because that's what they know.
Maybe I don't want to be alone my whole life.
Like me.
Like you.
I have to go. I'm hanging up.
You don't know what you're doing. No. Momentous and nonsense.
Okay, I'm gonna get you a bit more Ativan to settle you down.
I don't need to settle down. Tell him. I'll tell him. Leave me alone! Take your fucking hands off me, asshole! Our national security, give me your fucking cell phone! This is a fucking sham! This is complete bullshit! Jesus Christ, Virgil! Such a pussy, Saul!
Are you finished?
Sit the fuck down, I'm not finished. Understood? Maybe it is all in my head, but you're in it now, Virgil. Up to your fucking moron. God. Fuck.
How long have you worked at the CIA?
Fuck the CIA! After all the shit you dragged me through, I was just frustrated. I am crazy.
They know the game and they're good at playing it and so on and so forth. And we just kind of hang around and wait for the crumbs. And if we're lucky, we have money to invest and we can, get ahead a little bit and have fun and enjoy life. I don't like the foreign policy of the United States, whether it's a Republican or a Democrat in office in the White House. this whole, Republicans attack Democrats in totally irrational, insane ways, and vice versa. They're satanic and so on and so forth. This is madness. This is ridiculous. But people buy into it because we love stories. We want to believe in stories. We love to believe in them. So when our team comes up with a narrative, we believe it. We don't think it through. We don't question it. We just believe it. Anyway, she says in here, near as I can tell, the actual position of U.S. progressives is as follows. She's talking about progressives. When Benjamin Netanyahu does a genocide, it's genocide. If Trump were to continue the genocide, it would be genocide. When Democrats do a genocide, it's good people making hard choices within the framework of the political realities of our time. I wholeheartedly agree with this. You may think I'm nuts and disagree with me, but from what I've learned over the years, this is indeed the case. You characterize it differently. You use language and spin to characterize it as tough choices. PR people, ad people, they understand this. Propaganda people know this. And so, they're doing it all for the right reasons. These are difficult choices, but this is the way the world is, and we have to make it. Meanwhile, people above the state, below the state, tangential to the state, the deep state, the whatever, all the players are developing these narratives for our politicians to feed back to us in order to get on with making money. And that's just the way it is. And so we think, most of us, that we live on a planet with infinite resources. We're going to have oil all the time, or we're just going to miraculously electrify everything overnight when we have to do it finally. What we should be doing is investing our fossil fuel use into electrification and developing sustainable, living systems for us. But it doesn't matter. What's more important is paying the bills and buying some cool stuff and having status and whatnot. So go ahead and go for that if you want to. Who am I to tell you not to? Another friend of mine on the Facebook said, I'm going to hell basically because I put up a meme about Trump's kind of Lord's Prayer. And this person's a Trump person and scolded me because she knows that Donald Trump is a good Christian. I don't know how she knows that. I don't think he is. I don't know that he's not. But everything I've seen over the decades about this guy is that he really doesn't give a shit about religion. He gives a shit about being paid attention to and making money. And the religious part of it is just part of the show. And I think politics in the United States is a show. It's a reality TV show kind of thing. And their job is to entertain us and keep us thinking about this, that, and the other thing while all the magic happens behind the curtain.
Do you think it's possible to control someone's attention? Even more than that, what about predicting human behavior? I think those are interesting ideas if you could. I mean, for me, that'd be the perfect superpower. Actually, kind of an evil way of approaching it. But for myself, in the past, I've spent the last 20 years studying human behavior from a rather unorthodox way, picking pockets. When we think of misdirection, we think of something as looking off to the side when actually it's often the things that are right in front of us that are the hardest things to see, the things that you look at every day that you're blinded to.
And then we just react to whatever happens. And if the stock market goes up or down, it's a big drama thing for a while. But volatility is where people who play the game make money. Can't short a stock unless it's going to go down, and so on and so forth. So the crashes, the boom and busts are built into the system. If you don't know that by now, you're probably 10 or maybe 20 years old. We keep frantically panicking about all these things, whether it's Trump derangement syndrome or Democrats or satanic. And meanwhile, the world just continues the way it is. And we don't really solve problems that need to be solved. It's the same old, same old. It's Groundhog Day every day, and we don't notice it. There's not this funny feeling that, haven't I seen that somewhere before? In the Groundhog Day movie, the main character is kind of noticing something odd is going on, but continues with the Groundhog Day anyway. And we, as an audience, notice, that something odd is going on. But until you take a step back and really look at things from multiple perspectives, or from a broader perspective, or whatever, deeper perspective, you don't necessarily notice it, which might be fine for you because you may think it's less stressful not to notice how things are done. And maybe that's true. And there's a benefit to the lack of stress. A lot of my friends say, just get on with it. What are you concerned about these things? Get on with it. You can't do anything about it anyway. So, and that's a valid point. I understand that. But I'm just curious about it, so I check it out. This other guy on Medium, I follow, Mike Meyer. He's just talking about the usual thing, about the post-truth thing. Truth is there and evidence is there, and reality can't be argued with once you understand it. Like jumping out of a building, you're going to fall until you hit the ground, and so on and so forth. But as I said before, the narrative masters are creating the stories that we want to believe. And human beings are true believers. We're wired to believe, and we love to believe. We need to believe in something. What do you believe in? And so on. My other friend was worried because, okay, both parties are more or less useless, evil freaks. Whatever. And so what do we do? What are the solutions? And I know a lot of people, and I've read a lot of things by various organizations and institutions and journalists and writers and experts. They have ideas on how to make things better. They have solutions. There's plenty of solutions. But the socio-ideological, political, economic system, these human emergent complex systems are very complex, very hard to handle and change and shift. So a so-called paradigm shift or something like that. An axial age kind of shift, changing from one culture to another. Wow, how do you facilitate that? So in my story that I'm writing, one of the characters is explaining to somebody how all these revolutions and everything are just par for the course, but they don't solve the big problem. I won't talk about the big problem, but it just keeps happening. So killing people, assassinating people, wars, revolutions, they never amount to much. So yeah, next president's Democrat. After that, it's a Republican. They undo each other's work, back and forth, tit for tat. Nobody gets together and works for something. And we need to work for humanity and life on Earth across cultures and across nation states. And if we can't get that right, we're a self-terminating species, a self-terminating civilization. And there are lots of reasons to believe that. You can go to my book page on my cosbalon.eu and pick a book and start reading. Not to say that it's going to make you a genius or a know-it-all, like my friend who was damaged by the meme that deigned to suggest that Trump is a fraud. She thinks I'm damned, and she thinks I have a God complex. So if you think you know a little bit about something or aware of that something exists, because I don't claim any to be an epistemic Superman, I don't know shit. But if you deign to say, you might want to read a book or learn how to do the math or whatever, you have a God complex, because what you should be doing is just following and believing, and righteously so. And you should hate and be really angry at people who don't believe like you, which to me is a very non-Christian thing. It's not what Jesus would do, not my Jesus, not my beautiful little, 33-year-old Jesus or my teenage Jesus when he went through his bully period. And people like that tend to think they know what God thinks. And I think that's madness. That's kind of insane. Really? I mean, all the theologians or philosophers that are Christians and so on, thoughtful, deep thinkers that I know, and preachers and whatnot, they wouldn't deign to think they know what God thinks or that they can know the end of the world or how it's going to happen. Just like with climate change, the scientists don't know exactly what's going to happen. The climate is a very complex system of systems. It's a meta system. It involves a lot of different systems. They all interact. They all affect one another. And it's impossible to predict this. You can build models and you can do the math and you can look back historically into ice cores or whatever you do, tree rings or whatever lines of evidence you're looking at, chemical or geological or whatever, and try to come up with ideas. And you can also observe the data. We have a lot more data now than we did when Carl Sagan addressed Congress, for example. We can look at that and extrapolate from the data. We can look at all kinds of empirical experiments and whatnot. But we're still not going to be able to predict when AMOC happens, for example, or how quickly and how hot it's going to get. What's that going to do to ecosystems, to habitats? When we have the bug apocalypse and when we have the sixth extinction, all these things. I mean, human beings do have an effect on the planet, okay? It's just that we do, and we always have, and especially since we became civilized and settled down in big groups at a larger scale and started farming and warring and conquering and all that kind of stuff, building empires and becoming colonial, the age of reason, the age of discovery, in the Enlightenment, the big industrialization of the 19th and 20th century, the emergence of high technology and so on and so forth. We continue to conquer, but we've run out of frontiers. So we've run out of this narrative of the frontiersman, Monroe Doctrine, on and on. We're now up against it. We're up against the limitations that were always there, but that we didn't have to confront at the time. And now we have to. And this blip happened very quickly, starting in the 19th century and happening now. And what goes up must come down. It's a crash. But this time it's going to be a poly crash or a meta crash or whatever. Now, this may sound like Greek to you because you're not paying attention to these subjects. So I'm just talking out my ass. But in fact, there's lots of information out there for you to learn about this. And is it going to help you prepare? Am I a prepper? No. I decided to find myself a seat for the show that was gentle and kind and comfortable because I didn't think that being in certain parts of the world was going to be very nice at some point in the future, in my lifetime. If I thought it was all going to happen or things were going to get more difficult after I'm already dead, I wouldn't think twice about it. Why would I, right? Because I care about future generations. What kind of a, milquetoast liberal am I? So, yeah, I do care about future generations, but I can't do anything. I don't have any power. But anyhow, so he's talking about the axial age here, this writer, and the changes are not optional. They're going to happen. Everything always changes. And we're coming up against constraints and challenges that we can't avoid, we can't put off, we can't pretend aren't there. So at some point, more and more people are going to notice things because it's going to be in your face. For now, I think most Americans think that the weird weather in America is just weird weather. A lot of people tell me that, climate change is a hoax, a scam, a way of, making money and so on and so forth. You've heard that. And they're just plain wrong, but they believe that. So he talks about Thomas Kuhn's paradigm shift, which is a classic, and Hans Kung, the second axial period as articulated by Ewart Cousins. So all the hyperlinks are here if you want to look into that. It's quite interesting. I've talked before about global recovery oil. recoverable oil, and it's getting more expensive, more difficult to get it, and there's going to be less and less of it in the future, and how we invest it, that energy is going to be crucial. And of course, Nate Hagens and all of his guests constantly wrestle with this. In particular, that's what Nate's focus is on. So if you're curious to put down the Bible for a few minutes, you could watch one of his podcasts. So at the end of this, he just says he thinks that by 2030, I don't think you can say by whenever. I mean, it's already, he says things will begin to bite. I think they're already biting. I think they've been biting for a long time. I think they've been biting very hard since after World War II, despite the brief blip of the cycles of prosperity in the 50s, the 90s, maybe you could include, and other points. We've had a really rough 20th century. Things haven't been very bad since the 21st century, but it's starting to unravel. The big financial scam that the empire of the United States of America perpetrated on the world. Again, you're going to hate this terminology, but through the deep state, financiers and the big players of the great game, they figured out how to sell U.S. treasuries, how to print money, and how to have bases all over the place and intimidate the world into making sure that they controlled the resources. And you may think that's great. Fukuyama, Fareed Zakaria, Economist magazine, that, as long as we control the world in this business as usual sense, everything's going to be great. But that's fallen apart. And I think people are noticing it more and more year by year, in particular since the 2019, since COVID and whatnot. And it's not for the reasons of conspiracy or whatever. It's not that. It's that going through these disasters and seeing how we managed it and got through it is enlightening, as well as seeing the pushback from other parts of the world where they're saying, we're just not going to stand for it. And, again, the mask has been ripped off in Israel because of what happened there. You can't just say that the United States is the good guys anymore. There's no war they wouldn't support or they wouldn't take sides in and spend blood and treasure and materials on. So he says it's going to start biting in 2030. I think it's been biting for a long time. If you don't feel it, I think you're lucky. We cannot go back. The future is ugly, but the past is death. So he was making a point that, imagining going back to the past is going to work. I'd just like to see what would happen. We had that problem with that system failure, and the networks went down for a bit. Well, imagine if all kinds of circumstances lead to these networks going down permanently. So all your digital cash and all that stuff, it's just gone. Heat could do it. All kinds of things could do it, warfare, whatever. But imagine how dependent we are on these networks now, the internet and so on. And networks have always been a driver of civilized, progress and development for hundreds of years. Having networks, people being able to work together and collaborate with one another and learn from each other and compete with one another has created a great deal of progress throughout time. So, yeah, I think the election is a big show. I've thought that for a long time, at least, many cycles since the second, going back to 2005, I guess, or something like that. But it's a show. Enjoy the show. Root for the team that you like. I'm going to vote. I know who I'm voting for. But, I don't think my vote is going to matter that much, because I have a feeling that business as usual will continue 4 year or a year, 2 years down the road. We just don't have the wherewithal to understand the kind of hard work that we have to do to make things better. And maybe there's so many people that are just so comfortable that it's just idiotic to think that making things better really matters. You know, maybe this is the best of all possible worlds, or we could say this is as good as it gets. I don't know. I know accelerationism, the conservative side, you know, they want to crash the system because they hate the damn liberals and the Satan worshipers, whatever the hell. They want to crash it, and then the technologists want to crash it because they hate people. And even though like Musk is pro-natal and all that, these transhumanists would rather be data on a machine somewhere than a human being, right? Bug apocalypse, kill the world, doesn't matter. As long as our machines are out there exploring the universe, it's all good. And somehow my ego and my sense of self and my consciousness is going to be preserved in a machine. I think it's all pretty damn crazy. But at the end of the day, if you're pushing for that, you will crash the system as we know it, and it's going to be painful. Maybe those are extreme examples, but we don't need extreme examples because what we have is are a suite of problems in the polycrisis that are real existential dangers to our civilization as we know it, and we don't want to address it at all. It's just not something we care about yet. Very few people do, and as I've said before, if I could go out and convince the players to change the game, the rules-based order, to shift it in favor of democracy and people and health and intelligence, you know, there's really no incentive for them to want us to be too smart. So they keep spinning the narratives that we keep believing. And that's enough for most of us. So enjoy the show, and I'll talk to you some other time. Bouleanti out.